So I'm Deborah Johnston, and I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Academic Framework at London South Bank University, and I'm someone who stammers. And we're going to have this discussion today to learn more about what it's like to be a student who stammers in university in the UK. I've got a series of questions, and my first question is to ask each of our panelists here just to tell us something about their course.
I'm Jo. I'm a mature student with the OU. I'm currently studying English literature, which is actually a really hard word for me to say, and I should have actually thought about it when I thought of studying. I'm doing English literature with the OU. I'm in year 5 of 6, and I do hope to go on to do a master's afterwards.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben. I studied film at Falmouth University. I just graduated, and now I am Falmouth Students' Union President.
Hi, I'm Beulah. I'm currently studying a double master's in public administration and government at the London School of Economics, and I'm also doing the program with Peking University in China. So I specialize with public management and Chinese public policy.
Thank you, Beulah, and thank you to all 3 of the panelists. So my next question is this: tell me about your most enjoyable or your proudest time at university.
I think my proudest is also linked to my most difficult is when I was elected as a disabled students officer at SOAS, because I felt like how disabled students in my university didn't have a voice, and I tried to have a campaign where I tried to bring more awareness, especially for invisible disabilities like stammering and ones that people don't see, so to have more awareness. So linked to my campaign, I kind of tried to educate other students in campus about what it's like to be a student with visible disability, and also have an opportunity where I was most proud of that other people with visible disabilities that came forward. I mean, discussed how I wasn't the only person struggling the way I did, that other people were struggling with me. So I felt like we could all collectively have more of a voice and a presence at my university.
I think I was accepted onto the Office for Students student panel last year. I'm in my 2nd year now, and that's obviously I'm representing mature students, but I'm also representing those that have a stammer, which is really important to me, to actually give us a bit of a voice there when people talk about effective characteristics. It's not one that naturally springs to mind to other people. And as part of that OFS work, I had to give a talk, and they know that I don't like talking in public, and I had to give a speech about being a mature student to HE providers. Unfortunately, because of COVID, would not often say, but because of COVID, it was on a Teams or a Zoom meeting. And I think if I'd had to do it in person and go and stand on a stage and speak to people, I couldn't have done it. And they actually made the mistake of telling me beforehand that there were 300 people who were going to be watching. And I just, in the end, I had to just think, I'm just talking to myself. And it was absolutely fine. And I got lots of really good feedback. And I was really, really proud of myself, actually, because I was terrified.
So with film shooting, you have different sort of roles you can take, and I often did the screenwriting and directing, and they were my proudest moments, because they're almost the hardest moments as well, because when you're directing, you sort of have to be, you're almost seen as the leader of the group, having to make the decisions and talking to different people and sort of doing the big brief at the start of the day. And I really sort of enjoyed that, because I like to think of myself as a creative person, so I try to express my creativity through that, and it gave me the chance to talk more and sort of get more used to talking, and I sort of wanted to push myself more, so I cast myself in the films with dialogue to sort of get my confidence up, and that really worked, and I got more comfortable talking, and that's what sort of helped me go into this role as Students' Union President for Falmouth, and sort of be able to talk to students who have a stammer or anything like that, and be able to sort of help in any sort of way, and it's quite rewarding. But at the same time, when you're doing like presentations, you get that nervousness beforehand, but it's quite good to sort of be honest and just sort of do it anyway, because I think it brings that awareness. So yeah, it was my proudest moments, but also quite mentally challenging as well to sort of prepare yourself for it.
And so your proudest moment was also your most challenging moment.
Yes, and I think that's the reason, is because it sort of pushed me, and it made me feel not stronger, but it gave me that sort of feeling like I can do this, and I felt quite proud of myself for doing that, because yeah, just getting out there and sort of being able to not lead, but sort of get the job done.
So I'm going to ask the same question to Beulah next. What was your most challenging moment?
I think what was challenging was almost trying to hide the fact that I stammer, or almost being ashamed of the fact that I stammer. Like I tried my best. I did from not speaking very often and coming across a very quiet person, and never answering questions in class. But I think it's kind of a difficult thing to hide. So sometimes it come across in presentations or interviews, and I feel very shameful about it. That the fact that I stammer. So that was like one of the hardest bits, like, which I've learned growing older. That's how it's nothing to be ashamed about to stammer. That I feel like I'm more confident that the fact that I'm proud of my stammer, and that's just part of who I am.
The OFS talk was the most challenging because it was so big, but I've also had to give a smaller presentation to a class, and this was a few years ago, and this was the first time I actually said to my tutor, I would have been in early 40s, I said, I've got a stammer and I can't do it. I said, I cannot stand in front of class of my peers, actually, they were work colleagues. I said, I can't do it. And she said, yes, of course you can, she said. And she gave me some tip that I had this fear of me standing there freezing, and then we're looking at me and me stammering. And just as has been said before, I take it I took it as a personal failing, and it was something to be ashamed and embarrassed about, because it was something that until recently people could still laugh at. So I was so worried, but she said, if you give them something to do, if you give them a PowerPoint presentation, they're going to be watching that. They're not going to be looking at you. And she came up with so many really useful little tips that was, again, a really difficult thing to do. But once I'd done it, I was really proud of what I did, because I was so nervous. And then everybody else was nervous doing their talks as well. And so we were all in the same boat. But I think, yeah, talking in public in any way is a really difficult thing to do, and I think until you get over that initial I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed of myself, if you just say I've got a stutter, people will say, oh yeah, okay, and it gets it out there. I think that's a big thing to sort of take on board.
And that's a really important piece of advice, a really good tip for other people. And so, Joe, staying with you, I was going to ask the question actually, which is, what advice would you give to a student who stammers, who's either just starting university or is already partway through their course?
I would say, tell people about it. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's if you were disabled in any other way, it would be obvious. It's an invisible disability. Like my daughter has Crohn's, it's an invisible disability, and people need to be told about it. For me personally, I grew up in the 70s and 80s when it was a completely different world, and I remember my headmaster thought the best way to cure my stammer was to make me read in front of the whole school in assembly, and I can still remember that fear of freezing. And so fortunately things have come on now so much more, and my stammer has affected me throughout my life. My job choices, I didn't want to get a job where I had to talk a lot. It's affected so much of me, and it's held me back. And I would say to young people starting university now, don't let it hold you back. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's nothing to stop you doing whatever you want to do. just go and do it. And if you've got a stammer, then that's what you are, that's who you are, and go with it.
And that's a really positive message, isn't it? Don't let it hold you back, because there are so many of us doing different kinds of jobs and doing it really successfully. So thank you, Jo. So I'm going to ask that same question to Ben. Ben, what would your advice be to a student who stammers?
Yeah, it's quite similar to Jo's. It's it's okay. You know, I used to, thankfully, like, touch wood, it's been hard for me, but I class myself as quite fortunate at the same time. I used to act when I was younger as a way to sort of, you know, build up that confidence, and it did really work. And I think it's worked now for me to be able to do this, for example. But when my mental health is quite bad and quite low, my anxiety is really high, then that's when it really starts to kick in, and like all the thoughts, they get like, and what you're trying to say gets jumbled up in your head, and you often panic, and you're, oh no, people are going to laugh at me, or not understand what I'm trying to say. And you just sort of have to take a step back and be like, you know, just, it's okay to be to have a stammer, and, you know, more people are understanding than there is people who are not understanding. It's just sometimes the people who don't understand tend to have the louder voice, but the majority of the people who understand are and want to be supportive. And I think that's really, even if they don't say it, they're there for you in a way. And I think especially in higher education, you know, you meet people who are quite similar to you in like interests, and yeah, that basically, long story short, it's okay to have a stammer, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it.
Following on what Jo and Ben said, I think it's almost, don't be ashamed of the fact that you stammer. And for me, like, I've learned to look at stammer as a important part of who I am, an important part of my personality. And also sometimes be open to the fact, especially when it comes to university. I found that when I've been open with my lecturers and my professors, the fact that I stammer, they're a lot more patient with me, or at least tell them what you need and what help you need. Sometimes people just, like you said, people don't always know how to help you. So sometimes, especially, be open about what help you need. So like, how can you just give me a little bit more time during presentations to speak? Or can you understand like what it's like to have a person with a stammer in a presentation? I find it's more because some people, it's more that they don't help you, it's more that they don't know how. So it's almost best to tell them how. And for example, in a job interview, the first thing I always say that I have a stammer and I prefer not to have a telephone interview. I prefer to be on a video call where I can actually see a person. And also to get, so if I tell them it's not something of surprise, not something to be ashamed of. It's just something of who I am. So that's what I always say. Yeah.
So thank you all. Thank you, Beulah. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jo.